That's why I'm going into it.
I was glad when they said, "Unto me let us go into the house of the Lord." Giving honor to God, first of all, who's the head of my life and my salvation, to my pastor and first lady in their absence, to deacons, deaconesses in their absence, to officers in their appointed positions, to all of you, my brothers and sisters in Christ. We are looking at Genesis 13. We are in the new lesson plans. And I decided I was going to read the entirety, since it's not really that long. I was going to add the extra 7 to verse 1 through 7, and then go into 8 through the remainder. And it reads, "And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver and gold. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been, at the beginning between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, before we are brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. And if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes, and he beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward, for all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. Then Abram removed his tent, and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. The conflict between Abraham and Lot stemmed from the abundance of physical blessings that they both received. And with vast flocks, servants, and herds, that land could not sustain them both, leading to tension among their herdsmen. Their possessions were so extensive that they could not coexist. See, it's this common misconception that more is somehow always better. Many believe that more money, more time, more friends will bring happiness and peace. However, listen, that's rare. That's rarely the case. Y'all know, that's rarely the case. So, we often delay our joy until we achieve some certain goal, only to realize that, honestly, it just doesn't really bring us the fulfillment that we were expecting it to bring. And man tends to chase after things like positions, promotions, possessions, only to basically sacrifice time with their families, their communities. And it tends to lead to some type of conflict and ultimately some type of dissatisfaction. See, it's important to recognize that true contentment does not come from material possessions or achievements. It should come from finding balance and prioritizing what truly matters in life. See, we must not fall into that trap of constantly seeking more. Rather, we need to focus on cultivating meaningful relationships and experiences that bring us true fulfillment. Abraham's decision to prioritize his relationship with Lot over land is this powerful lesson in humility and valuing people over possessions. See, instead of engaging in that power struggle, Abraham graciously allows Lot to choose the best land for himself. That act of selflessness demonstrates Abraham's deep love and his respect for his nephew. So in a world where material possessions often takes precedence over relationships, Abraham's example serves as a reminder of what truly matters. See, by putting Lot's needs before his own desires, Abraham shows that people are more important than things. This mindset of prioritizing relationships over possessions is a valuable lesson that we can all learn from. So in our lives, it's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of success and of material wealth, and sometimes it's at the expense of our relationships with others. But if we take a step back and we focus on building some type of strong connection with those that are around us, then we can avoid unnecessary conflicts and strengthen our bonds with others. So Abraham's willingness to stand down and prioritize his relationship with his nephew Lot should be inspiring to those today, because we should be doing the same thing in our own lives. See, by valuing people over possessions, we can create a more harmonious and fulfilling existence for ourselves and obviously for those around us. So Lot had to make a decision to move to greener pastures, quite literally. Lot moves to greener pastures, or so he thought, because he looked over at that lush, fertile land of the Jordan Valley and it caught his eye. And sometimes that tends to happen. Things kind of sparkle and it catches our eye. See, but it says that this was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and that the men of Sodom were wicked. And then it became clear that this was not exactly the best choice for Lot. Now, on the other hand, Abram, he seemed indifferent about which land he received. He didn't really care. It's like, you choose the one, I'll go the other way. Vice versa. That Abraham really, he had material possessions, but his material possessions didn't really have him. And I think that's a lot. Some people let their material possessions possess them. So Abraham had a lot of possessions, both Lot and him, and they had so much cattle that they couldn't stay together. So Abraham was like, you know what, these material possessions are what they are. They don't really hold that much kind of value to me. And ultimately, it's become some kind of cautionary tale that what may seem like a better situation at first glance ultimately leads to great harm. So we have to be wary of falling into that trap of believing that grass is always greener on the other side. So that kind of mindset basically leads to pain, frustration, turmoil in relationships. We shouldn't always assume that bigger is better or that the greener is just greener. We need to reflect on Paul's words in Philippians. And Paul says, now that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. Because this is what this is really all about, is basically finding our own contentment. See, he goes on and he says, I know both how to be abased and I know how to be abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. See, Paul emphasizes that importance of finding contentment in every circumstance. It's that reminder to focus on gratitude and inner peace rather than constantly seeking external validation or material gain. God had a divine plan and a purpose for Abraham, and he trusted in the Lord's provision. Abraham trusts in the Lord's vision. That trust is evident in his actions, because the first thing he always does is build an altar. So he moves to one land where he already had the altar, it says. And then as he moves to this other land in Mamre and Hebron, he builds another altar. He builds another altar. And that's Abraham's way that he honors the Lord. He demonstrates that belief that he knows God's going to fulfill his promises that he makes to them. And so Abraham's contentment is displayed because he has this willingness to not engage in that conflict with his nephew. So as Christians, we also are promised something. See, we're blessed with the ultimate provision from God. So instead of a piece of land, we've been given the greatest gift of all in his Son. So through that sacrifice and the resurrection of Jesus, we've been granted a place in his kingdom. And it's this assurance of our eternal inheritance that it allows us to find contentment knowing that we have him as our portion and our most valuable treasure. And then, that song that says you can't always get what you want. But you can try sometimes and you just might find you get what you need. See, that sentiment, though, listen, that is a real true one, because a lot of us go, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. And it does, it resonates. We find ourselves desiring things that, listen, they may not even come to fruition. But listen, from a biblical perspective, it's possible to always obtain what you truly want. When? Here's the kicker to it, though. It's when your heart is in alignment with God's will. And when he is our ultimate source of fulfillment, then our desires naturally align with his. And while it's natural to pray and seek and work towards certain goals that may not come to pass, ultimately it's finding contentment in God's plan for our lives. That's the key. See, he becomes our everything. And that's expressed by David. David says, "Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire beside thee." See, Abraham exemplified that principle. He chose to yield in that conflict with his nephew Lot. He prioritized God's will above his own desires. And then Abraham demonstrated that deep trust and that reliance on God's plan for his life. And it serves as a powerful reminder that true fulfillment comes from aligning our hearts with God's and finding contentment in his provision. See, by aligning our will and our desires with God's will, as Christians, we can find true satisfaction. And it goes simply beyond submitting to God's will. It means making God's will and our will the same. So as believers, we are joined to the Lord as one spirit with him. And that means that not only should we see good reason to submit to God's will, when our soul can surrender its will to God, true contentment is going to follow. And there's a profound understanding of contentment, which is finding satisfaction in God alone. See, it's only then that we can embrace whatever comes our way with joy and patience. And Abraham exemplifies this when he chose to stand down in that conflict with Lot. And we have to embrace the power of aligning our will with God's will and find true contentment in him. Heavenly Father, thank you for your words. Thank you for this another day. Thank you for those who chose to come on out expecting to hear this message so we can discuss it just for a little bit before we move further into this service. Thank you for your Son, Jesus the Christ,